What's up, you goobers? This is the first of hopefully hundreds of videos where I go over various topics and things about life, lessons I've learned, my own experiences, other things I'd like to talk about and break down. I'd imagine you're probably aware of the fact that there are a couple of channels out there that are very similar to this one in the terms of the type of content that is going to be made. And I've watched these channels myself, and they've honestly inspired me to take this as an avenue to share my own story and experiences, as well as lessons I've learned that will hopefully help others and provide a new perspective on topics. And at the end of the day, I hope this channel will end up helping others grow and maybe gain a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them, as that is my end goal with this channel. So if any of this sounds interesting, feel free to stick around. Anyways, on to the topic of this video. Now, to give some early context, throughout my life so far, and even now, I've always been quite reserved, and growing up, I had trouble making friends and talking to people. I always sat back and did my own thing, as I would rather observe people talk when in groups, and I wouldn't bother going and talking to others. In fact, the very concept of going up and talking to others was terrifying, and still is to some degree. Now, as I grew older and got into my teen years, I came across the Briggs personality test, and then I took it. It was then that I had been introduced to the concepts of introversion and extroversion. And after taking a personality test on this website that I had stumbled across, the results pointed to me being more of an introverted personality type. And as I kept aging and going throughout my high school years, my mind at the time made the connection that my social anxiety and struggles with making new friends and talking to people was a result of my introversion. And the more that I had looked into these traits about introverted people on a surface level, the more that I believed this connection that my social anxiety and poor social skills were going to stick with me forever because of my personality type. And this led me to believe that I was kind of just doomed to be that awkward kid that never really made any good friends. And I also started to believe that I had a lack of control over my own ability to socialize and make friends, and that the only way that I was ever going to get new friends or meet people was going to be because of fate and circumstance, and that I had no power or say in the matter. Now, this, of course, didn't contribute to a very healthy outlook or social life, and it left me feeling kind of hopeless that there wasn't really anything I could do to change. And for a while, I did kind of just accept that it was up to fate and happenstance that I would ever really get to talk to or meet new people. And I only really ever had 1 to 2 friends that I ever talked throughout my school years regularly, and they weren't really close friends, or just people I associated with. And most of my time was spent alone, and my schooling years were quite lonely in that sense. And this even continued after high school, especially since I decided not to go to college, which only further isolated me, as I wasn't really in a place with other people my age. And only recently have I had the kind of revelations and insight that I did, in fact, have the power to change things. Now, fast forward to present me, now 23 years old. I've realized that my social anxiety and my lack of social skills are in fact not defined traits of who I am. Recently, I decided to ask someone I knew for any recommendations on books to read. I thought that reading would be a nice thing to try out and be something of more value to be doing in my free time. He recommended me quite a few books, many of which I didn't really have too much interest in reading. However, 3 books caught my attention. The most relevant to this topic was that book that I will put on the screen right now. Reading this, it really did give me such a deep and insightful understanding of myself that I wouldn't have ever otherwise learned had I not read this book. And it goes into great detail on introverts versus extroverts and the dynamics between the two and each other respectively. And during my reading, the topics and ideas that the books ended up covering started to break that chain link that held my social anxiety and introversion so tightly together. And there was a lot of things from that book that stuck with me after reading it. And some of these things is that I do think it is important to recognize that, yes, as an introverted personality type, I do value time spent alone. And I also value quiet, peaceful environments where I can just kind of sit and reflect or just do my own thing, and just kind of like enjoy my own hobbies, right? And this time spent alone or in a peaceful environment is used to regain focus, clarity, and energy within myself. And it's also important to recognize that when talking to people or being in large groups at events with people that I don't know, or just being in noisy, fast-paced environments for extended periods of time would essentially just drain the life out of me and suck the literal soul out of me. And I think this is where the big overlap between social anxiety and introversion occurred for me. Just because the time that I spent alone recharges me, and time spent with others or just being in large groups drains me, doesn't mean that I don't inherently value or appreciate those experiences. It just means that I needed to find the proper environments to put myself in so that I didn't overwhelm myself. And I also realized I just needed to find the right balance of spending time with others and going out in public while still finding the right amount of time to spend alone in order to function and maintain a healthy life and state of mind. And one last thing the book pointed out was that most of the time, introverts usually only have a small handful of friends that they normally spend time with. And personally, this kind of resonated with me a lot because when it comes to friendships or relationships or any kind of interpersonal relationship for me, I tend to focus more on quality over quantity, right? There's still a lot of people that I know loosely, but I don't talk to them daily or that often. It's usually just a few people that I consider my real close friends. And those are the people I spend most of my time with. Now, while reading this book along with the other two that I had found interesting, I'll make videos on those in the future, by the way, I started to take action in order to improve the quality of my social life and tailor it more to suit my own needs and wants. And this shift in mindset proved that I did in fact have the power to minimize my own social anxiety, and I was improving my ability to be able to thrive in social or fast-paced environments for short periods of time, and that all of the social anxiety and my poor social skills, they weren't defined, unchangeable traits that I possessed. They were just skills I hadn't cultivated yet. And I also told myself that it was okay, that if most of the times I preferred or valued spending time alone or with the people I considered my close friends, instead of constantly trying to put myself in situations that would drain my energy if done too much. And as for how I minimized my social anxiety and improved my social skills to cultivate that sense of confidence within me, I decided to basically throw myself into the fire, and I started looking for groups or events online that I thought were interesting. And I just started showing up to them. I knew absolutely nobody there, nor was I even familiar with the area half the times. And I made it a very important point that I only went to events that sounded interesting to me and that I wouldn't hate doing, because otherwise I would resent even showing up and hate being there, which would inevitably lead me to just not talking to anybody, and just I'd be miserable. And it's also worth noting that having a common interest with these people, these strangers, essentially made things easier on myself. Of course, I still felt uneasy and nervous inside each time that I did it, but I did have something to fall back on if I ever needed to try and talk or connect with somebody. And I also made it a very important point that I only did this once a week, but I made it a point that I had to do it every week. And I did experiment with doing it more and less, but I did eventually find that once a week for me was a good balance, and that if I showed up to these events, I wouldn't be disappointed in myself. In fact, I'd be quite happy, and I would go home and spend time alone or on my hobbies or with the people I was already close with, and I would feel happy because I put myself in an uncomfortable environment and I made a step to improve myself, and that felt good. Now, over time, as I kept doing this more, I found that it became a lot easier to manage my own anxiety when talking to strangers in person. I slowly felt a newfound curiosity and appreciation that I never really felt before when it came to talking to and meeting new people. And soon after, I felt that I had built up some genuine social skills with the experiences that I put myself through, and it slowly built a genuine sense of confidence within myself. Combining this with spending the proper time alone to recharge from these social events has led to less social anxiety overall, and I now actually look forward to going to these small events or going out to meet new people more often because I don't feel like I'm overdoing it or burning myself out, and I now actually really appreciate spending time with others. I really do believe that we are all very highly social individuals, and that if we spend our whole lives alone, we would literally go insane. And I personally did have a year in my life that was pretty much exactly like that, and it was the worst year of my life by far. Anyways, that pretty much covers everything I had to say about this topic, and if this video helps at least one person in any way, then I'll be happy. And if you enjoyed, then feel free to stick around because I have a slew of other topics and things that I want to talk about, and they'll all be coming soon. Take care.